Feminism ethics aims to raise the importance of gender equality, reforming the traditional beliefs that are associated with women. In the emergence of issues such as violence, sexism, and stereotyping, feminist ethics aims to empower women to be treated and respected equally while being anchored in a utilitarian paradigm. Now, I would like to call our first speaker, Ms. Marga Chavez.
Thank you, Andy. For the first part of this video discussion, I will be discussing the importance of gender equality. Gender is a social form. People decide what it means to be a man or woman, and these social conditionings typically require children to conform to certain and restrictive gender roles and expectations from an early age. Its origins may be traced back to the notion of traditional gender roles, according to which men are expected to be heads of homes while women are meant to be caregivers. A consequence of these traditional traits of masculinity and femininity is that men hold a greater authority over women since masculine features are seen as having greater prestige and power than feminine attributes. As a result, this perpetuates violence, especially towards women, as a way to prove their dominance and power. Women's empowerment does not ask people to give women the sameness on how men are treated. With the uniqueness of both genders, it aims to have equality with the opportunities and rights for each gender. According to Dr. Amaryllis Torres, rather it means recognizing, respecting, and fulfilling the equality rights of women and men. Gender inequality persists today as a result of the unseen war on women, which includes sexism, stereotyping, and violence. And we believe that the only way to fight for gender equality in a more inclusive and intersectional approach is that for what is accessible to men is to be accessible to women as well, and modify the law to ensure better equivalency in men's and women's opportunities and rights. Gender equalities promote a dogma that both genders can work together and be together in the same field. The gender gap that had been made thousands of years ago is now receding little by little. Man and woman might be created differently in appearance, but in terms of mobility, both can work as one and acquire the same rights. Female rights are also human rights. Oppression and subordination may exist today, but when the time comes, women's rights will prevail in society. We must not be hesitant to call out people and educate them about this issue, since small actions can still count to a bigger impact and initiate change. Because inequality is a prejudicial approach that retains patriarchy as a powerful force in society. That is why greater awareness of this issue should be properly considered. Giving people a wider perspective about this issue can also make a change by practicing a more unbiased environment for everyone and promote a more respectful and balanced society free from inequality, violence, and discrimination. Now that I have concluded my part on the importance of gender equality, our next speaker will be Ms. Andy Aguilon.
Thank you, Marga. For the next part, I will be discussing on how the feminist ethics impact in reforming traditional beliefs that are associated to women. Ever since, people viewed men as superior in many aspects, may it be in work, academics, or socialization. In our country, the Philippines, before modernization occurred, men were the only ones privileged to study their desired courses or to work on their aspiring occupations. On the other hand, women are told to stay in the house and learn how to cook, to clean, and to be a wife. In an article titled The History of the Human Female Inferiority, Ideas in Evolutionary Biology by Gerald Bergman, states that in late 19th century biological publications, a significant component of early evolution theory was the assumption that women were cognitively and physically inferior to males. Female inferiority was a natural conclusion of the Darwinian worldview since men were thought to be subjected to significantly stronger selective pressures than females, particularly in combat, mating rivalry, food, and clothing. These circumstances lead to women being restricted to do things or getting abuse that is permitted by law. One example that I think everyone is informed about is women in Saudi Arabia, which are not allowed to drive. In 16 countries around the world, like the Arab Republic of Egypt, married women are only allowed to leave their houses by law or custom. If not, she is required to have her husband's permission or she loses her right to financial support. Another one is in Nigeria. Husbands are permitted to hit or slap their wives under Section 55 of the Penal Code for the purpose of correcting her. Another example is 30 countries in the world do not allow a woman to choose where to live. This situation still happen now, and they show how traditional belief shape a country's way of living. However, as time passed by and minds began to be open, women had the opportunity to prove themselves in society. Women had the opportunities to study, interact with other people, lead, and make a change. There's still limitations, but women are freer now than before. An example would be the development that happened in Saudi Arabia, whereas in the year 2015, women are now allowed to vote for their leaders. This example is a little step that shows women are attaining the rights they have. I would like to quote what Madhu Kishwar had stated. Traditions are not cast in stone. By their very nature, they are supposed to evolve constantly and meet the changing requirements of time and social context. And I agree with what she said. Our traditions are not cast in stones like the Ten Commandments. They should grow and develop just like how our generation develops. We should not instill in our minds that women are weak or vulnerable or inferior. Instead, we should believe and be with them to change that person. Now that I have concluded my talk, I would like to call the next speaker, Mr. Jericho Cabigao.
What an informative spiel. Thank you for this, Andy. Actually, we have learned that not only women, but also other genders under the binary spectrum contends and resist against the conventional mold. Related to this, allow me to discuss the crossroads of feminism and society under a utilitarian scope. Well, the crossroads of feminism and society are both inextricably distinct in the lens of politics, in which one must highlight that both feminist ethics and political action are profuse and diverse in its very sense, anchored with a paradigm that concerns greater happiness and the common good. Utilitarian encapsulates the pro-choice nature of feminist ethics as it posits the facets of its advantages and disadvantages, whilst its canonical status of ethically right and wrong. The premise of feminist vision includes provoking, casting repulsions upon its distractors, and generally signals irk for resistance. The significant contribution of feminist morality are determined in our understanding of social and moral adversities. Well, as further expressed in Webb's work from the year 1986, feminism is not a single work of a recorded set of ideas. It includes itself in the various and wide analysis of branched out disciplines, whereas society, as its playground of morality and concept, carries out an what do you call this? An unwieldy dynamics of possibilities, as argued by Olufemi from her great book from the year 2020. Feminism is a political project that is invested in what could be. It is known for its devotion towards ambiguous futures that aren't well grasped yet. From the same work, she interpolated that feminism is a justice work. It proposes a purpose that is beyond highlighting the forms of how women are discriminated against. Hence, the task of feminism is heralded as a remedy to the products of gendered oppression in the means of organizing and defining new, future-based ways that reimagines a world that is free from heteronormativity, racism, capitalism, and patriarchal rulings set upon most, if not all, preconceptions of an equitable society. What else? Feminism instrumentalizes itself as a cultural conversation, I have to say. It bridges and transcends stories from history as a work of forwarding adversities to action. This assertion is evident with gender triumphs. We have women in suffrage, divorce, women's rights legislation, and more social political matters that give the core of feminist morality a seat on the table. As this work continues to be scrutinized under a utilitarian lens, we are opting towards a fluid choices that are encompassing of the common good while limited and defined by its consequences. While it is usual for a state to be regarded as someone who organizes our lives, we must also remember that the state is also heavily sexist. State sexism has not diminished, but it only shifted into different forms. Gender pay gaps, domestic violence, state killings, conventional standards. These things continue to stem and thrive. When we call the state patriarchal or sexist, we mean that its provisionary acts are solely allocated resources of fueled out to reinforce gender oppression through its restrictions of everyone's liberation. Whereas in a utilitarian point of view, women and genders outside the binary spectrum are dignified with adaptive preferences that aid them to rally the hate-fueled constraints imposed into them. From voting restrictions, the choice of abortion, conjugal rights, and property ownership, we have seen that feminism, as guided with radical choices and supported of the utilitarian paradigm, it enables us to combat the glaring hierarchic feature of gender biases. Conclusively, feminism has packaged itself to be sold to wider audiences. Understanding the morality of feminism is not intrinsically inherent, however, something that should be framed. There may not be direct answers as the face of feminism is intertwined with the ever-changing form or face of discrimination. But collective responses call us out to remind us that we are susceptible to these changes, and so that we must be one. It reminds us that we are capable of disrupting the realm of the ruling classes, that the forthcoming of feminist ethics will only be conducive and efficient only if we continue to shake and unsettle with the principles of a sexist state. And now that I have reached my conclusionary part, let us delve more on the other side of the picture, since we have all known that every side is vital. Now, Miss Francesca, if you may.
Thank you, Echo. As for Echo's introduction, it is indeed right to get the intrinsic point of the contrasting point of view. For this, allow me to discuss the opposition's point of view towards feminist ethics. Well, we have established that feminism is not necessarily a war between men and women, nor is it a movement for the sole purpose of benefiting women. There is still various opposition against feminism that make it more challenging to achieve a world that revolves around equality and intersectionality. There are questions that have been baffling many feminists for a very long time already. How can a woman who constantly is oppressed in all social, economic, interpersonal, and political aspects not be a feminist? And how can a woman take part in her own oppression? These questions, no matter what angle you look at them, all lead to the root cause of why we are still fighting for fundamental rights today. These sufferings that we have been enduring for hundreds and thousands of years are all rooted in the patriarchy. Now, Ms. Shireen Belza will proceed on to unraveling the examples of what the opposition mischaracterized about feminist ethics.
Thank you, Francesca. I'll now continue delving more into the opposition's point of view through these examples. First is, in religions such as Christianity, women are portrayed as seductresses that tempt men into disobeying the orders of God. Moreover, in religious texts, it is always implied that our gods are mostly male and our saints and heroes remain male. Unsurprisingly, these texts and books were also authorized by men and later on interpreted by men. When it comes to privileges and opportunities, men continue to have far more than women. Many women are still underpaid in the workplace, and it is difficult for women to find work because most job vacancies prefer men. It is something that many people are not seeing and are simply turning a blind eye to because they are not directly affected by it. The multiple burdens that women face as well as the oppressions that comes with them. When it comes to paid and unpaid jobs, productive and reproductive work, notably when a woman is also a mother. Numerous people still believe that feminists are a threat for the reason that they believe women only want to be more exceptional than men, which is clearly not true. Women are more concerned about basic human rights, such as right to an education, the right to work, the right to marry of her own choosing, the right to life and liberty, and the right for an opinion, and many others, not just sex. Another common misconception is that only women can be feminists. However, many men are now also advocating for women's rights. Given that some men can see how much women struggle in the society, it is clear that patriarchy and women's suppression are real and continuous. Because people grew accustomed to and comfortable with patriarchy over time, it has evolved into an endless social system. Fortunately, many women began to speak out for the sake of the women's community. This includes Elizabeth Cady Stanton, the first woman to lead the feminist movement, and Dr. Amarlis Torres, who educated our minds regarding how feminist ethics works. That concludes the examples. Now, Ms. Francesca Bolintiam will continue the stand of the opposition.
Thank you, Shireen. Furthermore, patriarchy is also interrelated with many oppressive crusades such as racism, white supremacy, and even capitalism. In a study by Boza in 2019, it has been stated that both migration flows and immigrant incorporation are both molded not only by white supremacy but also capitalism and the patriarchy. The dangers of a world that still greatly relies on the oppressive system under patriarchy puts not only women of all races in danger, but also our innocent children that suffer the consequences of misogynistic mindsets. The intersectionality of the oppression we have been suffering from is as broad as the intersecting beliefs that remain against the equality we are fighting for. The bottom line on all these is that as long as our own kind do not believe in feminism, there will be no full persuasion of the opposite gender. Change must first begin within ourselves and from small steps of courage and resilience. We may be able to form big leaps towards equality. Delving deeper in the topic about patriarchy, it has its own historical roots. Beginning with Christianity, misogynistic ideals have been repeatedly forced into numerous religious teachings in which women are handed the stereotypical roles to give birth, raise children, and become the main caregiver in the household. These roles may seem requisite, but because of how people act on their religious beliefs, gender norms and patriarchal privileges dominate many households, workplaces, and institutions. Looking at the surface level, we are already aware of the many inequalities that women go through every single day. Lacking economic, political, social, and even health empowerment, it is clear that oppression remains to be a part of every woman's life. Despite of that, we must keep fighting for gender equality, violence against women, and intersectionality. As quoted by Kamla Basin, an Indian developmental feminist and activist, We look at the world through women's eyes because for the last couple of thousand years, the world has been looked at and spoken about through men's eyes. And that statement holds so much truth in it. There is no other right time to start revolutions and advocate for a change in how we want the world to be except now. However, we must also remember that we cannot achieve equality if we overlook the importance of inclusivity and intersectionality. In feminism, we are not only fighting for women's rights, but also for the freedom and for the everyone strongly oppressed their whole lives. Attaining safety, freedom, justice, and equality is only possible when we fight for it, regardless of race, class, ethnicity, and sexual orientation. Defeating patriarchy means giving the oppressed their rightful victories. And soon enough, we will find ourselves celebrating those wins. Now that we are about to end this video discussion on feminist ethics, we can look forward to a better future for all of us as long as we continue to empower and educate women about their rights and to understand and correct people's beliefs on how gender operates in the different identities and perspectives we have in society.
We should keep in mind that we can help in supporting women's movements across the globe and ensure the rights of all women, that they are respected, valued, and acknowledged by educating and using our voice to raise awareness and knowledge about this certain matter.
That is all for our video discussion. I hope that this can be helpful not only for us, but also help in raising awareness of the issues that women face, but also the gender inequality we have in society. That is all for our video discussion. Thank you!